What's up, people? Good morning. Monday morning, victory Monday morning to be precise, and the vibes are still pretty good. Things are happening. Good stuff is going down with this organization right now, and with that comes potential accolades. And I've already spent decent amount of time on this channel talking about the awards these guys are starting to rack up and the awards they have a chance to rack up as the year goes on. By the way, Ken Walker III really probably should win NFC Ground Player of the Week this week. Just putting that out there now. All right. Here's an award that we won't know about until the end of the season. Here's an award that won't really be determined until probably the last couple weeks of the year. But it is an award that a Seahawk could win. It is the AP NFL Coach of the Year. Awarded annually to the NFL head coach, adjudged to have the most outstanding season. It's an award that is quite old. It's been handed out since 1957. And unlike some of the previous awards, the Seahawks have won this award before, once. The Seahawks head coach did win AP Coach of the Year once. It was in 1984. Chuck Knox, with his third Coach of the Year, won with the Seattle Seahawks. That was, of course, the year that Kurt Warner went down, and the Seahawks adapted a pretty pass-heavy offense with Dave Craig, and it worked extremely well, and we rode it further than anybody expected. So this award is not new to us, but we haven't won it since, and obviously we've had good years in Seattle. Like, just focus in on since the year 2000. We've won a lot of games. We've had a lot of successful seasons. We've played in 3 Super Bowls. We've won a Super Bowl. Despite that, no Coach of the Year. So not only have the Seattle Seahawks only won one Coach of the Year in their existence, but as an extension of that, Pete Carroll has never won the award, which it kind of shows the shortcoming of this award, I guess, right? Like, it's so easy to miss a guy who has piled up wins and made multiple Super Bowls and generally been considered to be, at least in some areas, a very good coach. And he just kind of slips through because something weird happened the 1 or 2 years maybe he could have won it, and nobody gave him recognition for other good seasons, and boom, you're looking up and you have a great career, but no Coach of the Year. So, let's take a look at the climate right now for coaches. What do they have to do to win head coach of the year? Let's look at the history of the reward going back to 2000. Let's stay in the modern era, I guess. Let's try to get a feel for it. So first of all, here's the thing. Here's the important thing as I see it right now. The best way to win coach of the year is have an elite team. 13 plus wins. If you can get up to that like 13 plus win area, your name is probably automatically entered as coach of the year. Most years, a team with an overwhelming record, like 13 or more wins, ends up winning coach of the year. In the last 22 years, we've had Dick Geron, 13-3 Bears. Bill Belichick did it 2 years later. Handful of years later, Bill Belichick did it again with a 16-win team, the infamous 16-0 Patriots. A few years later, he did it again, 14-2. Next year, Jim Harbaugh, 13-3. Ron Rivera won his Coach of the Year, or his second Coach of the Year in 2015 when he went 15-1. Jason Garrett, 13-3. John Harbaugh, 14-2. So a decent chunk of these Coach of the Year awards just go to dominant teams. And within that, you also have some borderline dominant teams that go 12-4 or better, like the Eagles here, the Chargers in 2004. You've got, Ron Rivera doing it in 2013 with 12 wins. You've got a 12-win Bears team in 2018. You had a 12-win Titans team last year. So having a really great team is the probably most convenient way. When you take a look at some of these seasons where a coach won Coach of the Year despite their team not being even close to dominant, being just a good or very good, but probably not even really great team, there were extenuating circumstances. 2000, Jim Haslett for the New Orleans Saints. The Saints in 1999 were awful. They won 3 games, one of the worst teams in the league. Jim Haslett gets them to 10 wins. They look at that improvement. They look at the history of the New Orleans Saints being a sad sack franchise that never wins anything, and they go, that's Coach of the Year, even though he only won 10 games. He won 10 games with a team that was coming off a 3-13 year. You've got seasons like Lovie Smith in Chicago in 2005. I remember this year very well. That year, the Bears lost their starting quarterback throughout a unknown rookie at the time, Kyle Orton, and won 11 games. So they gave him Coach of the Year, even though the record wasn't amazing. The next year, Sean Payton. Again, it's for a Saints team that just got displaced by Katrina for a whole year. They basically blew the 2005 season away because they had to play so many games on the road or games on basically a neutral site. And they were back to being a sad sack organization that couldn't win anything. And Sean Payton comes in there, brings in Drew Brees, stabilizes the franchise, and takes them to the playoffs in a 10-6 record. So even though he wasn't, one of the dominant teams, in fact, 10-6 is a pretty pedestrian record, the fact that the circumstances were so hard against him and he was able to do it to a franchise that historically loses a lot was impressive enough for him to get the nod. Mike Smith, rookie Matt Ryan, Falcons coming off a 4-12 season. The Michael Vick stuff hanging over that organization, and he takes a rookie quarterback and gets to the playoffs. So not dominant, but his job was exquisite. Marvin Lewis with the Bengals. I always kind of felt like this Coach of the Year award was almost a career lifetime achievement award for having as much success as he did coaching the Bengals. But to get that Bengals team back to 10-6 was actually a significant accomplishment. They had been flailing around for a couple years post the Carson Palmer injury, and he had one last nice year with Carson Palmer at the helm. So unconventional, but maybe it was somewhat weak year as well. Bruce Arians took over for a guy who got diagnosed with cancer and then led the team to a 9-3 record and a playoff appearance behind a rookie quarterback. So that was a shoo-in, right? Like, you have a story like that, you're almost certainly going to win Coach of the Year. He takes over for a guy suffering from a severe disease, and he leads the team to a record that was probably better than what they would have had with the original guy, Chuck, and that's going to win Coach of the Year all day. Let's see here. What else do we have? Sean McVay with the Rams. He turns around a team that had been terrible for almost a decade and made them really good in one off season. So that makes sense. You've got Kevin Stefanski getting the Browns to the playoffs for the first time in almost 20 years, making that team look legitimate for the first time since maybe they had come back to the NFL, but at the very least since 2007. Yeah, 11 wins is going to cut it. 11 wins is going to do you a lot of... It's going to give you a lot of credit that you normally wouldn't get. So you better either have a really compelling storyline or you better have 12, 13 wins or more. That's basically what I'm trying to say here if you look at the history of the award. With that being said, let's talk about the competitors for Coach of the Year, because unlike a guy like Ken Walker, who kind of has a free run to the end zone here, all he has to do is keep doing what he's doing, he will win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Carroll's got some hurdles. The first one, probably the biggest one, is Nick Sirianni in Philadelphia. The Eagles are 8-0, only undefeated team in the league. They're doing a great job taking advantage of the talent that they have. And here's the thing. Okay, you look at this schedule, all right? Home against Washington. And I know they're playing okay, but they're not a good team. At Indianapolis with probably Sam Ehlinger, who did nothing yesterday and is probably just not ready for this moment. Green Bay looks like crap now. Tennessee's good, but you're playing them at home. You've got 2 against New York, who I think are somewhat fraudulent. You've got the Bears, who are frisky but not good. You've got the Saints, who are frisky but not good, and then you've got at Dallas. That one could go either way. That's a good team. But what I'm trying to get at here is there are probably about 15 to 16 wins on this schedule. This is a very soft schedule that Philadelphia has. So they should honestly be able to just run a train on it and get at least, I would think at least 14 wins. But more realistically, I see 15. And if they get to 15 wins a year after they barely eked into the playoffs and 2 years after they were terrible, yeah, that's probably going to get you Coach of the Year. The next most likely candidate is Brian DeBole, who we actually handed his second career head coaching loss to a couple weeks ago. And the reasons why the Giants, or DeBole in particular, might be Coach of the Year are pretty clear. The Giants were terrible last year. By the end of the year, they were probably the worst team in the league. I think they won 4 games. They picked extremely high in the draft, but their cap situation was terrible, right? They paid a bunch of money to Kenny Golladay, who basically decided he didn't want to play football anymore. They had a bunch of dead money invested into other areas as well. They went right up against the cap last year and still only won 4 games. So the thought was, whoever goes in there now to take over for Joe Judge is going to need some time to rebuild things. He's not going to be able to win any games right now. The team needs to be blown up, detonated, and then maybe they can rebuild on the corpse a year or two down the line. But no, this team is winning now. They're 6-2, and you look at the remaining schedule. You've got Houston, you've got Detroit, you've got Washington twice, you've got the Colts. They might be able to continue to not play amazing football, and you're still probably looking at about 10 wins here. Even if they lose all the games you expect them to lose to, this looks like a 10-win schedule, maybe 11. So if DeBole makes the playoffs with a team that a lot of people, myself included, thought was going to be a bottom 3 team this year, I thought the Giants were going to be abysmal, he should probably get it. Or at the very least, he should be right there with Sirianni, and I would have no problem in that circumstance with the Giants making the playoffs and the Eagles finishing like with 15 wins, of both those guys finishing above Pete Carroll. I get it. It's obviously too bad, but being objective, winning 15 games in one season and taking a team that was expected to be one of the 3 worst teams in the league to the postseason when you just got the job, when you just got here, or just got there, I should say, is a remarkable achievement. Other than those 2 guys, though, there's probably some stuff that can happen. The third most likely coach, we have Kevin O'Connell over in Minnesota, and the foundation of the Vikings producing Coach of the Year is a little shaky to me, but they did go 8-9 last year, so they weren't terrible. They were okay, and they didn't lose a ton this offseason, right? Like they still have the same quarterback, still have the same running back, using the same receivers. Obviously, some stuff is different. Like they're a little healthier on the defense with that pass rush with Danielle Hunter. But mostly this would just be generated around the fact that the Vikings may end up winning like 13, 14 games. You look at their remaining schedule, they've got Buffalo, Dallas. The Jets look like a legitimately good team now. So those are going to be difficult games, but the rest, it's not looking too bad at all. So you've got 7 wins for this Vikings team right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, they could really get to 13 wins. And they're running away with their division. Maybe they take some weeks off at the end of the season because of that. But when you look at the way the Vikings offense has been improved, like it is a little bit of a more higher functioning machine than it was in years past, I think. They've really only had the one bad game offensively this year against the Eagles where Kirk Cousins just didn't show up. But I'm not seeing the story here, and I'm not sure if we're going to see the end of season record. Like, Philly dominated this matchup head-to-head, so if these are the 2 teams that end up jockeying for the 1 seed, which seems likely, the Eagles are almost certainly going to win that jockey match. So I don't see how Kevin O'Connell does it, and I don't see how what he's done is more impressive than what Carroll has done with a team that was supposed to be, according to most experts, really, really bad this year. Another name would be Mike McDaniel in Miami. I don't get this one at all. He's currently fourth in betting odds, I believe. Um, I like Mike McDaniel on a fundamental level, but he almost got his quarterback killed and got his season derailed when he didn't need to because he forced a player to play in a situation where there was just no need for that. I don't see how you can win Coach of the Year if you're doing that. To me, that's kind of disqualifying. And the Dolphins were a winning team last year and the year before. They almost made the playoffs 2 years ago, I believe. But 2 years ago was 10 wins. Last year was 9 wins. He took over a team that had a winning record the last 2 years. So you look at the Dolphins right now, they're 6-3. Okay, they got Cleveland, so 7, 8, 9, 10. They're probably going to get to about 10 or 11 wins. Pretty good. But I'm not seeing a Coach of the Year when the team he took over was already winning about that many games, and what he did to Tua. So at that point, you actually get to Pete Carroll in the current betting odds. Right now, Pete Carroll is 5th in betting odds to win Coach of the Year. And his reasons why he could win it are pretty obvious. The Seahawks were a 7-win team last year. They supposedly got worse because they lost their quarterback and their franchise cornerstone middle linebacker. They didn't do a lot in free agency. They're starting like 6 or 7 rookies. 40 million of our cap or something like that is dead, going to Wilson and Wagner playing for other teams. It looked like it was going to be a 4-win team to some people. I never really thought it was going to be that, but a lot of people did think Seattle was going to be like a 4-win team this year. And here we are. We already have 6. We're 6-3. You look at the remaining schedule, there are some definite wins here. Like you got Tampa Bay. You're feeling pretty good about that one with the way Tampa's playing. 2, 3, 4. I mean, you are probably looking at a minimum of 10 wins. Here's the question, and this may be what the Coach of the Year race comes down to. It depends on what happens with Sirianni, and it depends on how much credibility the voters are going to give a team steamrolling a slightly weakened schedule, although I think that part of it is overstated. What's more impressive, the Giants winning double-digit games and making the playoffs, or the Seahawks winning double-digit games and making the playoffs? That's subjective. I don't know what the answer is. But the point is, you've got some real problems between Carroll and Coach of the Year. Not because of what he's doing, but because of what other people are doing. The Eagles could legitimately go undefeated, and I wouldn't be shocked. If the Eagles go undefeated, how can you not give it to Nick Sirianni? If the Giants win like 11 games with this roster, with no wide receivers and a lackluster quarterback and an offensive line that is made up of 80% trash cans, and if they win 11 games, how can you deny him? He's a first-year head coach cleaning up the mess that Joe Judge wrought. Like that's tough. The only other guy that's worth touching on right now for this potential award right now is Robert Saleh, from the Jets. Things have obviously been going pretty good for them. They are currently sitting at 6-3, in line for a potential playoff spot in the AFC, and they are doing it with relative incompetence at quarterback. Zach Wilson is bad, and this team is finding ways to win anyway. He can do nothing for a whole game, and they can still win. This team has sustained some severe injuries, but they keep on chugging along, and they keep on finding ways to win. So I could see Robert Saleh making a push at the end of the year. I could see Robert Saleh if the Jets keep winning, and I don't know if that's going to happen, but they still play the Bears, they still play the Lions, the Jags. That Jets-Seahawks game in January is going to be big. So at this point, they probably have enough chalk on the board to get to, man, I would say 10 wins would be about the over-under line for the Jets. Now, if all these teams that I'm talking about, the Giants, the Dolphins, the Jets, the Seahawks, get to about 10 wins, and they all make the playoffs, but no team is dominant, I have to believe it would go to Sirianni in Philly. if Philly were to lose like 3 games between now and the end of the year regular season, I still feel like DeBoll would get the nod over Carroll. I don't know if I agree with it, but I respect it. I think DeBoll has done a pretty incredible job. But I will say this, just personally, this is just me talking. Even though the Giants' remaining schedule is pretty soft, I do think there is potential for that team to really slip, lose some games they should win, and end up around 8 wins. If that happens, combined with the Eagles losing 3 or more games between now and the end of the regular season, I think Pete has a real chance to do this. Pete has a chance to get to that 10 or 11 win mark, point to a team that supposedly didn't have a quarterback, that supposedly was starting too many rookies to be competitive, that, everything that people were saying about Seattle. And I'm not talking about people like me that thought we were going to be kind of bad. I mean the people who thought we were going to be really bad. 3-4 wins. And he's going to have a real argument, and I think that's what it's going to take. But right now, until the Eagles lose, hard for me to believe that Sirianni will be denied. All right, I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. Can he do it? What's it going to take? And who would you give it to right now?